The Jewish Channel's Week in Review. Obama and Netanyahu speak and meet. A new one-man show, The Jews of Cameroon, and more of the Jewish news that's changing your world right now in this episode of the Week in Review. Hello, and welcome to the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. It's been a big week for news of Israel, Iran, and the United States, with most of the world wondering what the plans are for President Barack Obama and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Both delivered speeches this weekend in which they emphasized Iran. Here's the president.
Let's begin with a basic truth that you all understand. No Israeli government can tolerate a nuclear weapon in the hands of a regime that denies the Holocaust, threatens to wipe Israel off the map, and sponsors terrorist groups committed to Israel's destruction. And so I understand the profound historical obligation that weighs on the shoulders of Bibi Netanyahu and Ehud Barak and all of Israel's leaders. A nuclear-armed Iran is completely counter to Israel's security interests. But it is also counter to the national security interests of the United States.
The president, speaking at the annual conference of the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, or AIPAC, drew a rhetorical line in the sand in regard to keeping nuclear weapons out of Iranian hands.
So we all prefer to resolve this issue diplomatically. Having said that, Iran's leaders should have no doubt about the resolve of the United States. Just as they should not doubt Israel's sovereign right to make its own decisions about what is required to meet its security needs. I have said that when it comes to preventing Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon, I will take no options off the table. And I mean what I say. That includes all elements of American power. A political effort aimed at isolating Iran, a diplomatic effort to sustain our coalition and ensure that the Iranian program is monitored, an economic effort that imposes crippling sanctions, and yes, a military effort to be prepared for any contingency. Iran's leaders should understand that I do not have a policy of containment. I have a policy to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. And as I have made clear time and again during the course of my presidency, I will not hesitate to use force when it is necessary to defend the United States and its interests.
Many observers had been looking to see what the tone would be in the Obama-Netanyahu relationship. In that regard, Netanyahu clearly allowed Obama full space to be the one quoted with fiery rhetoric, as in the Israeli Prime Minister's speech, discussion of Iran took on a decidedly more casual tone.
A country that builds underground nuclear facilities, that develops intercontinental ballistic missiles, that manufactures thousands of centrifuges, and that absorbs crippling sanctions, is doing all that in order to advance medical science. So you see, when that Iranian ICBM is flying through the air to a location near you, you've got nothing to worry about. It's only carrying medical isotopes. Ladies and gentlemen, if it looks like a duck, if it walks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, then what is it? What is it? That's right. It's a duck, but this duck is a nuclear duck. And it's time the world started calling a duck a duck.
A tone of collegiality continued with Netanyahu's later visit to the White House.
Mr. President, thank you for those kind words. And thank you, too, for that strong speech yesterday. And I want to thank you also for the warm hospitality that you've shown me and my delegation. So if there's one thing that stands out clearly in the Middle East today, it's that Israel and America stand together. I think that above and beyond that are two principles, long-standing principles of American policy that you reiterated yesterday in your speech, that Israel must have the ability always to defend itself by itself against any threat. And that when it comes to Israel's security, Israel has the right, the sovereign right to make its own decisions. I believe that's why you appreciate, Mr. President, that Israel must reserve the right to defend itself.
Of course, the president had much more to say about Israel and America at his speech at the AIPAC conference. One part of it that is receiving little notice is a reference he made to his speech at the United Nations in late 2011. At the time, the Palestinian Authority was seeking recognition as a state within the UN. Obama delivered a speech discussing American, Jewish, and Israeli history that was roundly praised by Jewish leaders. At several points, the president seemed to be expecting applause from his audience of world leaders, but none came, even when he cited the killing of Osama bin Laden. It appears that the president actually was somewhat chagrined at the lack of endorsement for what he had to say from international leaders at the time, because he had this to say at AIPAC.
Last year I stood before you and pledged that the United States will stand up against efforts to single Israel out at the United Nations. As you know, that pledge has been kept. Last September, I stood before the United Nations General Assembly and reaffirmed that any lasting peace must acknowledge the fundamental legitimacy of Israel and its security concerns. I said that America's commitment to Israel's security is unshakable. Our friendship with Israel is enduring, and that Israel must be recognized. No American president has made such a clear statement about our support for Israel at the United Nations at such a difficult time. People usually give those speeches before audiences like this one, not before the General Assembly. And I must say, there was not a lot of applause.
Of course, one man who gets a lot of applause when he takes a stage is entertainer Ari Gold. He's got a new show and a new music video, as Meredith Gansman reports.
As same-sex marriage rights pass in more and more states, many gay and lesbian Jews say finding acceptance within their religious communities is still difficult. I spoke with one gay Jewish artist who's exploring these tensions in some provocative ways.
Welcome to the first annual...
That's Ari Gold. No, not Ari Gold, the character on the HBO series Entourage. The real Ari Gold is a Jewish and openly gay, award-winning recording artist whose newest single, My Favorite Religion, wrestles with the relationship between his spirituality and sexuality. In the controversial video for the song, Gold brings the two together in ways that some may find shocking.
I put on the tefillin, and I do, and it's sort of sexualized for me. There was a connection between leather straps around boys' biceps and sexuality.
Raised Orthodox, Gold says he was terrified of coming out for fear of being ostracized by his family and community.
Growing up, I did feel like if anyone found out who I really was, I would be kicked out of school. I would be thrown out of my home. My family would disown me. Like, I really thought those things would happen if anyone found out.
Gold got his start in show business as a young boy, singing on The Joe Franklin Show after being discovered at his older brother's bar mitzvah. And now Gold is developing a one-man show about how he went from child actor yeshiva student to gay pop star. It's called The Real Ari Gold.
I call it an autobiographical, homo-theatrical multimedia musical.
With the help of his parents, who he describes as show Jews, and who became talent agents, Gold sang on over 400 TV commercial jingles and provided the voice for characters on animated television shows. He also recorded many Jewish children's music albums, but at the age of 18, Gold wrote an 18-page, handwritten letter to his family in which he came out to them as being gay.
By coming out fully and telling you I am gay, that's where we almost all broke down. I broke down and thought I wouldn't make it through.
As an adult, Gold has a very different kind of showbiz career. Although Gold's spirituality and sexuality were once at odds, with the recent release of his provocative new music video and his one-man show, he said he's learning how to bring these two sides of himself together.
Whenever I hear myself saying things, even like, well, I left the Orthodox community, I'd never really left. I just redefined it for myself.
For the Jewish Channel, I'm Meredith Gansman.
Thank you, Meredith. This past week was the holiday of Purim, which is also known for its performances, and Rebecca Honig-Friedman found one special puppet show.
The Purim Spiel, or play, is a centuries-old tradition of the Purim holiday, but this year it's getting a modern twist at the JCC of Manhattan with Purim Spiel Shadow Puppet Theater, performed in a bubble. And we get to go inside.
You know, the regular shadow theater is just a flat surface. In our case, it's an inflatable. The kids, I think, like it. They like to play around it. They like their shadows on it. It's a more interactive way of performing the show.
The show's creators, husband and wife team Leonid Khanyan and Luba Prager, both natives of the former Soviet Union, staged their first Purim Spiel Shadow Puppet Theater in 2009 in Russian, with grants from Cogeco and others, including support from the JCC's Generation R, a community for young Russian Jews and their families. The show sold out both its performances, and its creators wanted more.
We requested for more people to see it in English. We really wanted to share, the whole experience. So we got another mini grant to do the English version.
That English language adaptation is debuting at the JCC the Sunday after Purim, March 11th, after a performance of the original Russian staging. Both versions update the content of the Purim story with popular music and references from American and Russian culture, respectively, while the ancient art form of shadow puppetry gets a futuristic spin using video projections and that bubble, designed by Khanyan, who works as an architect. Inside the bubble, Prager, one of the Purim Spiel's 4 self-trained puppeteers, shows us how it works. For more on the Purim Spiel Shadow Puppet Theater, watch the full broadcast version of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Rebecca. Finally, Jews in Cameroon were the subject of an event at the 92nd Street Y last week, and Christian Needham reports on that as part of TJC's partnership with the 92Y's Resource Center for Diversity.
The Jewish diaspora is growing, thanks to this man and his people. Serge Attell is the head of the emerging Beth Yesharoon Jewish community in Cameroon, and he recently paid a visit to the 92nd Street Y in New York City to tell his story, beginning with the recital of a special blessing in Hebrew to mark the occasion.
Baruch atah Hashem Eloheinu melech haolam shehecheyanu v'kiyemanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh.
Attell was joined on stage by Rabbis Gerald and Bonita Sussman, who were the first Jews to visit the community back in the summer of 2010, while volunteering for U.S. Jewish outreach organization Kulanu. The group is sponsoring Attell's 13-stop East Coast tour of Jewish venues to introduce Americans to his community with his spoken descriptions, a slideshow of images showing community life, and even a musical performance of songs composed by community members for Sabbath observance.
Le Radodi, B'nei Shabbat Neka Abela, Shamo B'zacho B'zibu Echad, Ishyanu El HaVyuchad.
To see more from this event, please tune into the full broadcast edition of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Christian. That's all for this week from all of us here at the Jewish Channel. Be well. The Jewish Channel is available on cable. Time Warner Cable Channel 528, IO Optimum Channel 291, RCN Channel 268, Bright House Channel 330, Verizon Fios Channel 900, Cox Channel 1, Frontier Communications, and now on Comcast Cable in the on-demand menu under Premium Channels. For more information, visit tjctv.com.